And this was all because CLG was not complacent with that 5th, 6th place, and they want to be winners again.
Yeah, 4/5 of this team have won an LCS championship for CLG, so they have a lot of experience they're taking into this playoffs.
Let's see what they do here in game number 1. Picks and bans as we do get into the draft. Counter Logic Gaming starting off by banning that Jarvan that's so popular these days. Lucian as well. Team Envy gonna go ahead and take Taliyah off the table.
Yeah, and I'm seeing so many different variations of drafting in 7/16. It really feels like teams do not have a set thing that they need to do, and every team has a different look. Even the fact that CLG picked blue side today, when both Dignitas and C9 selected red side as their choice in every game.
Yeah, there are a few things to kind of warrant that. When I was looking at Team Envy win rates, they have a 73% win rate on blue side, which is actually very high. And then their red side win rate is actually only 20% throughout the split. Whoa. So Envy on red side, they seem to struggle a little bit more, and definitely a lot more than their blue side.
Yeah, and then beyond that, oftentimes when you do pick blue side, it's when you have one particular champion in mind that you want to pick.
Ooh.
Zach has been that pick on 7/15 or 7/16. Remember, he was nerfed pretty heavily on 7/15, and I think it's up for debate whether he is first pick needed, and that's one of the reasons you can see Envy, Orianna, and Taliyah aren't considered must-ban champions, and they're willing to give Zach through to CLG.
Yeah, but this means that LirA can pick an aggressive jungle matchup into OmarGod. Zach doesn't really take aggressive runes at all. You can invade, you can punish him, and you'll be lower HP now because of the nerfs, and that's exactly what they're doing with an aggressive jungler.
They pick up the Elise, they allow LirA to do what LirA does best, play that aggressive early game jungler. Get in the face of the enemy jungler as well as the enemy lanes and make those plays to start things off with. Talking about playmaking, they'll also pick up the Thresh.
And whenever you have an Elise, drafting another winning lane is crucial because your turret dives can put somebody very far behind. So I'm expecting something for Team Envy in terms of that last counter pick for either top lane for Seraph and possibly for Nisqy here to pick something up and then ban the others.
Yeah, you wonder if they'd have to lock in their 80 carry for Apollo now, with 2 80 carries already banned, Trist picked on the other side, and potential bans that CLG could throw down in phase 2 since CLG was so quick at doing that. And now we will see a mismatch since they've locked in the Cassiopeia.
I feel though Twitch, Kog'Maw, Caitlyn, Sivir are all good picks for him. So picking your mid laner third here for Nisqy and then banning away some of the counters, you can pick the LeBlanc, you can even ban away things like Corki or Aurelion Sol at this point and have a good time.
Let's see how they approach that as we get into the second part of the bans here. 2 left for each team. You did mention how the picks are mismatched, so expect to see different roles banned away by both sides as the jungle and the bot lane is locked in for CLG already, while the support, jungle, and mid laner picked up the team in.
Yeah, so CLG, after that they first picked the jungler for themselves, they went with the full bottom lane here with the Tristana and then the Alistar. And these are kind of almost signature champions for these guys. Stixxay was one of the first people to pick up Tristana last year, even when it wasn't meta, and he's always been pretty good at that champion. And then Alistar for Aphromoo, a playmaker once again, and a champion that he is known for.
Well, Aurelion Sol off the table.
Don't risk it.
Nope, you don't want to risk it against this guy. Huhi has shown such ridiculous mastery over that champion. And when discussing the mid laners in the North American LCS, it's always a point of conversation that comes up when I'm talking to you guys or anyone else. Huhi forces this ban so often, and it's such a weird, out-of-place ban that you wouldn't do against anyone else.
Yeah, and there's also now been 4 bans against Huhi, 4/5 of the MD bans against him. Not to mention, the early game jungle matchup favors Envy with the Elise against the Zac. So I feel like Huhi's in a very difficult position now that many mid laners have been banned away, as well as having the poor jungle matchup.
I believe that Huhi actually receives the second most bans in terms of target bans in the NA LCS. Bjergsen is number 1, and Huhi is right behind him.
Well, I mean, this was a player who for a long time was looked at as having a very shallow champion pool. People were looking at this guy like, oh, as long as you take Aurelion Sol away, so what if it's a weird ban against anybody else? It shuts this guy down. Who cares? Take him out of the game. But now his champion pool has widened so significantly, he has a lot of different options to fall back on. The option that Team Envy going to fall back on for pick number 4, the Caitlyn, that has been such a staple of top-tier picks and bans throughout this split.
Exactly, and this is another one of those champions that we see on 7/16. Much nerfed than what we have seen from her all year. For the Caitlyn, we'll see how well that can do laning-wise against COD to scale into the late game. The blind pick top laner is going to have to be done with the Gnar right there, and now we'll get to see what Huhi has to say about it. It's funny how people always said he had a bad champion pool. He was the one who said he played too many champions. And this is one of the champions he actually does play. And it's one of the champions he tends to excel on. In fact, after he succeeded with this in the LCS split, in one series, he played it twice. It was banned for like a week after that against him, so being able to absorb all those bans and still get something that is unique to him is a Huhi thing.
Yeah, and one thing about vel'koz that you always have to keep in mind is if they have gap closers, they can close distance on you and possibly jump on you and kill you. He actually hasn't died on this champion yet in the 2 games that he played it.
The champion has so much power loaded into the kit as well. The amount of damage that can come out from him if he gets time to full fire that laser into multiple people is absolutely insane. Keep your eye on him during these team fights. Want to go ahead and cover the last pick by Team Envy as the draft closed out. They got the Shen there in the top lane to go up against Darshan.
Yeah, I was actually expecting the Shen to come through for Seraph. It's banned against him very frequently. And also against the Gnar, it's not an awful matchup. You sometimes have kill pressure when he's mini Gnar and you get a gank. But like I was saying, having a lane that has gank assistance when a winning lane allows LirA to come to those lanes and upset them. So LirA can play to actually either side lane here, whether it's the Gnar pressing in on the Shen, or it's the Caitlyn Thresh pressuring in the Alistar and the Tristana.
And I really want to watch LirA, especially at the beginning of this game number 1, because like Kobe was talking about, these 2 teams played each other not long ago towards the end of the regular split, and CLG absolutely dismantled Envy by targeting LirA, by making sure they kept that win condition offline. I want to see if they do it again or if Envy's wise to those tricks.
Yeah, and it's going to be on the Envy laners, in a small sense, to protect LirA from something like that happening. We know that Zach generally can't do that to enemy junglers early, but if Envy's laners push up, ward in the right spots, it's going to be very difficult to shut down LirA in this game.
You know, boys, I'm so happy that these days, whenever we see an Alistar pick, it's always some chroma or some sort of version of the Cowbell Alistar, so we're never going to be without that special taunt.
There's 2 types of people in the world. There are people who like the Alistar Moo Cow skin,
and people who should be banned.
Exactly. There's people who are wrong.
Exactly.
But also Bubblegum Zach users. Let's go.
All right, Bubblegum Zach fanning out, level 1. CLG just sort of going to be guarding the entrances to their own half of the map, making sure that Envy's not up to anything too tricky to start this series off. It is a best of 5, going to be longer than what either of these teams are used to playing in the regular split, obviously, so there's going to be plenty of time to adapt and change strategies as we go game to game. I would not be surprised if we saw something different at the start of the games as they go on, but right now Aphromoo just having a good time.
On one of his signature picks as well, and as we mentioned in Champion Select, Stixxay, a fairly signature Tristana as well, as that was the champion he won his first LCS championship on. So maybe there is a certain level of playoff comfort. What's funny is OmarGod's first LCS game was Huhi on vel'koz as well. So we got that extra little tweak in this, which is fun for CLG.
And this is something that the Zach can go ahead and gank mid from one of the Raptor Brush, and then with that CC, give enough time for Huhi to open up on the vel'koz. That combo is actually incredibly potent against somebody who doesn't have a mobility spell in their kit. Look at this, Envy doing something clever.
Going in for this. Level 1, getting into some action. Aphromoo going to be soaking the damage from this one. OmarGod still staying on the red buff.
And they're standing here. They're going to force
push off.
Moving in further onto Omar, taken down below 200 HP. Apollo is not going to allow him to finish this buff.
All right, and this is the fear sometimes, Zach. Weaker.
Oh, they're going to Peacemaker. They might just find the passive.
He always had
LirA's going to the other side.
Well of his smite, but this is what's happening. Seraph gave a extended leash for LirA on red buff, so he powered through that as the Caitlyn Thresh as well as Nisqy invaded in. So in the regular season when we talked about all of CLG ganging up on LirA, all of Envy just ganged up on OmarGod, and that's unlocking LirA to double buff early on.
And that is such a good strategy there to shut him down and get LirA so far ahead, because like I said when Zach was selected, very exploitable in the jungle. You're typically taking cooldown reduction runes. You take W at level 1, which has no CC. Taking a fight as Zach is almost a death sentence, so you can't even fight that 3-on-3 against the mid laner and the bot lane of Envy.
LirA will also leave that small wolf alive in the camp to delay its spawn even further. You can see the fan vote there. Over 3/4 of the fans think CLG is walking away with the win, but Envy with plays like that at level 1 will do everything in their power to stop that.
Yeah, this is brutal because it's not like OmarGod got pushed off red to just go to a different camp. He recalled, so he's a full cycle behind.
That was a lot of damage on the Stixxay from Hakuho and Apollo. Nice death sentence to start that one off.
Yeah, Apollo with the net away there too to get some extra damage onto Aphromoo. But they're straight up just winning this bottom lane as well as the mid in CS and the jungle. You now get to control OmarGod. You took all of his top side jungle. He has to clear bottom side for experience. Seraph is safe for the next few minutes here because of that.
Yeah, an incredibly quick 3 buff for LirA, and now he actually has all the options because he knows that OmarGod isn't going to be level 3 until about 4 minutes, just based on what he did to his jungle. He knows what he has left and knows how long it takes a level 1 Zac to solo 3 camp the red side.
Nice trap.
So much good chain CC from Hakuho and Apollo. This bottom lane for Team Envy. We mentioned Apollo getting better. Hakuho truly doing a lot of work in the support role as well.
Remember what I said about this Elise? She can go for a turret dive here. They just spotted her on a ward. She's going to go over and disrupt the Krugs. But OmarGod just hit level 3, and they're going to spot him and control him a little bit. But it's also potential dive. Pretty risky, though.
Thinking about it, if he would have seen that Zac wasn't there, or if he'd gone for a recall. Actually, I think LirA was hoping that Zac had already recalled away from that one because we're 4 minutes and 10 seconds into the game, and that's just his 3rd camp to be taken. But this is still such a good start for Envy because not only do they have the jungle ahead, their bottom lane, where they got to pick the pushing Caitlyn. You need to pick
another! Right on it!
Another
hook! Trap into the damage!
So close! Stixxay has to use the heal to stay alive. Hakuho dials these in one after the other.
Yeah, and as we pointed out in the laning phase, Apollo and Hakuho have had the best early game laning phase of LCS bottom lanes as far as some of the CS differential stats go. Hook after hook!
He just doesn't miss, and it allows him and Apollo to completely control the lane.
And I swear this Caitlyn nerf is something that came through, and it's potentially saved Stixxay here. There was a lot of damage, 0.1 total attack damage, and also 20 base damage taken off of the extra damage from traps. Like, this right here is something that he's just barely getting saved, and the Caitlyn still looks like it's so abusive in the lane.
Yeah, and we do need to talk still about the Caitlyn nerfs, because the early laning phase was very minorly nerfed. It's the scalings on the traps and the attack speed per level over a few patches that Caitlyn has lost. So the late game, if you're equal in items, is going to be much less than the Trist. But if you're able to bully lane to a point where you're still hitting an extra item on someone else, you're still going to be very effective. So for CLG, it's all about withstanding this storm of the way Caitlyn lanes early.
Yeah, and you can see they kind of went for that from the start with the Relic Shield. We've been seeing a whole bunch of ancient coins, but both supports said we need to be able to at least sustain and be a presence in this lane in some way, shape, or form. But like you said, right now, Apollo is sitting on BF Sword Gold versus the pickaxe that Stixxay was forced to buy off that back.
And boys, right now there is almost a 1,000 gold lead for Team Envy over CLG just because of the massive advantages they have accrued for themselves in both the jungle and the bottom lane, as LirA continues to just move up and take things away from OmarGod.
Exactly, 400 of that gold is LirA versus OmarGod, and you do need to see where there is the moment that he can pay it forward, because he has the advantage over Zac, but if you're thinking about a late game team fight, Zac will still be effective, whereas Elise could potentially struggle for that. So unless he's actually snowballing his lanes after getting ahead of OmarGod, it could be a bunch of ado about nothing.
And you can see he's definitely going for that with the mobility boots here. An early buy of that just to get around the map on the Elise and be a little bit faster to the camps. Invade, keep that uptime and that efficiency up, because now he's even got a good jungle path coming his way with a red buff top. That'll get him level 6, and he'll just keep going into that jungle. It could get him to the enemy blue buff when it's about to spawn, and that might be the next play that's coming out here.
Team Envy looking for an opportunity to translate these advantages for their jungler, like you said, Jatt, into an advantage for someone else. LirA has not found his way really into any other lanes. We saw the attempt bottom where he was sort of found out, maybe even accidentally, by the Zac. But if he can get one of those ganks off, unleash some of that power that he gets through the mobility of the early purchase on the level 2 boots, that's when they can actually start snowballing this game even harder. They've got to do something with this. They are up against a Tristana and a vel'koz and a Zac, and the scaling is very frightening.
Exactly. It's 700 gold, 400 to 500 of that gold is on LirA. And then you look at the CS in the lanes, and mid is equal, bottom is basically the BF to pickaxe advantage, but still no turret damage. So these advantages have not been converted on, so to speak, yet by Envy, but they are on the brink of being able to open up a lead.
Stixxay and Aphromoo have also staunched that bleeding of CS in bottom lane. It was getting a little severe there for a while, upwards of 15 to 20, but now they've kept it comfortably around 10. And remember that Envy were the ones, although they had their support early, they knew what both of CLG's bottom lane champions were before picking that Caitlyn. So they picked this specifically for this matchup.
Yep, and you can see LirA walking in towards where you talked about, the bottom side of the map where they had that priority. And he's looking for Zach, but Zach was just handing off the blue buff. And they know that because they can see it on Huhi.
Yeah, and I think there's good wards by CLG in their bottom side jungle here. Gotta point out that Aphromoo rushed the Sightstone rather than something like Boots and Mobility because he knows he's not in a position where he can roam against an Elise. That's just going to be where Elise wants to find him. Instead, he defensive wards his own jungle and allows OmarGod to go bomb Cinder, not go for the early Tracker's Knife, and they're trying to disrupt this invade. The red's probably over to Envy, though.
Yeah, they have to back off because Nisqy actually has mid-priority here. And now he has to go back for it as he comes in. Gotta get the smite.
Right.
Omar.
Yeah, cute. Omar getting himself CC'd, but Envy doesn't want to force a crazy fight in here. I like this restraint. There's no reason to force that.
Yeah, but I like that Envy are keeping their foot on the gas pedal here to try and keep OmarGod down. He has not been able to even throw an elastic slingshot toward a lane in the first 9 minutes of the game. It's just all been about taking care of his jungle.
But I also want to say they need to complete the two-step plan of taking over the game as Elise. Take over the enemy jungle, help your lanes.
Yep.
He's done the part one, but the lanes still actually haven't been assisted by the Elise. So Zach has an elastic slingshot a lane. Elise hasn't cocooned a lane either.
And talking about those lanes, topside, Darshan, 85 CS to the 70 of Seraph. He's doing good for himself right now. Seraph missing the taunt means the setup is not there for LirA.
That was really good from Darshan there. And also, here comes OmarGod. This could be how they turn the game around. There's the elastic slingshot in.
That's bold.
Or goes after it, but not going to make anything happen out of that one.
But they also have Huhi roaming up, who had that mid-priority. So it's 3 people strong on the top. They're forcing Seraph off. And that top lane turret actually has taken a lot of damage so far. It's half HP.
And that's the power of the Gnar, right? You have the ranged auto attacks. You're going to shove your opponent in. You're going to put this pressure down. And now with the TP coming in from Envy, you may see some playmaking happen. LirA and Seraph moving around, seeing maybe if they can find anything. Instead, just backing away as the bottom lane continues to tell the same story it's been telling for the first 10 minutes of this game. Apollo and Hakuho making Stixxay and Aphromoo very, very familiar with how bottom lane looks from underneath your own turret.
Yeah, you really want to have something happen on this bottom side of the map as Envy, whether it's getting the Drake with the blue buff and the Cassiopeia, or going for a dive. You want one of these things. Nice pull again.
Yet another pull, more chill. See more burst. Close. Ace in the hole coming through. Aphromoo with a nice point-blank block onto that one, barely getting himself away too. CLG survives another day, but LirA wants to make sure he can change that if possible. Mobies are up, not going to go around. Little too late. Nisqy, meanwhile, on the Dragon. Who needs a jungler? He's got a blue. That's enough to take it down for himself. LirA moves in. Smite Secure will be there, and that is objective number 1. Team in.
It's about to be number 2, too, because I believe this bottom lane turret has enough minions and enough damage here to go down and be first turret for Envy. Depends on what happens top. Now,
race. It's actually rather close here as they get the last hit.
There you go.
Wow, that was
first turret bonus.
very close.
Very, very good by Seraph, though, to back up here because you know you're making a play on the bottom side of the map, and OmarGod was not spotted on that bottom side, so you have to extrapolate that he's top, and they did exactly that.
Turret for turret, but again, the farm advantages and that split-second turret, first turret extra gold makes it so Envy is still ahead by about 1,000 gold so far. There's no Drake up to fight for because they just took the Drake for free. So it will likely be a little bit of a wait before we get to see them have anything worth having one of those larger skirmishes over.
And now, Envy, with the bottom turret down and the top turret down, they have a chance to swap lanes here and try to go and accelerate the pace of the game with the Caitlyn to get the top turret, get to like level 9, start putting points in trap, go mid, and start just going all around the map. But it looks like they're just going back to kind of the standard lanes.
Yeah, and you do need to be able to transition this once again. LirA has been running around with Boots and Mobility. He had a huge amount of gold in his pocket, just finished the Runic Echoes, so that's when you really become almost a one-shot threat at this stage in the game, when no one has built up any health from health per level, or been able to build any magic resist. So with the Caitlyn, who has the BS sword and the pickaxe, you would want them to swap the lane 3-mana wave and force Zac to come fight them while the Zac has this gold and item disadvantage. But it looks like they're just continuing to push down bottom.
I remember last split, story for Envy, large gold leads, best 10th place team, but the macro game, the mid-late game, the transition was always a little bit off. And that might be a little bit reminiscent of this game here, because if they were to go top side, there's no dragon, you're not fighting over the bottom side of the map now, and you force CLG to rebuy control wards and place them on the top side, because they're defending bottom right now very heavily.
Darshan is just destroying Seraph in this 1-versus-1 top side. And honestly, Darshan has done so well in the top lane this split, but now Apollo has found himself in some trouble. That Lantern is interrupted. Apollo is stand united. Keeping him alive for now as he throws down the Spirit's Rep. Darshan gonna be taunted. And Seraph comes in, seeing what they can do. And the lasers fired off the first one for Huhi. LirA now gonna be taken down second. It's a 2 for 0. Nisqy comes in on the 1-6. They might be in some trouble, but Nisqy may yet find his mark. Nisqy takes down Stixxay, now looking to chase down Omar, grabs the double kill. 3 down on the side of CLG. Nisqy still trying to get away, but not gonna do it. Darshan coming in to clean this one up a little bit. Apollo still walking away. Darshan, can he find that boomerang? Jumps forward, does not quite hit it.
And the chaos ends in a 3 for 3 and a closer game. We're now at 300 gold as the difference. And that was so close to being even better for CLG until Aphromoo hit Nisqy towards all the people he could kill. But we're going to watch this one more time, and the question for Omar is, how do you respond to adversity, especially as a rookie in your first playoff? This was a great initiation by Omar.
Yeah.
Let's bouncing out of the Lantern to completely cut off Apollo. Yes, Seraph comes in, but he flash taunts to get the blobs out, and Huhi has roamed around where he can get a lot of damage out. Then the flank from Darshan is also great, but Stixxay flash to safety only to have Aphro go and help him. Aphro then falls to Apollo, and the rest of his team can no longer help Darshan finish Apollo and Hakuho because they now have to fall back to deal with Nisqy. So Darshan finishes off for a 3 for 3 and a bit of an oopsie on that headbutt from Aphro.
Yeah, and that's a bit of oopsie from both sides because Envy, that's a very unsafe route to take through the jungle at that point in the game. And like we said, the swapping of the lanes just hasn't happened for them. And there's a bit of a timer on that, right? Where we're saying they should swap it so they can keep pushing that Elise, the Caitlyn advantage. And then when something like that happens, you get the Tristana towards her Infinity Edge, towards the next item. And then the pace of the game actually is favoring CLG, because even though they don't have that winning lane, now we're seeing it come through where they swap it. But even though they don't have the winning lane, it's just not enough of a gold advantage yet for Envy to be kind of out of the woods with this.
OmarGod moving up, taking out one of those blast cones. Aphromoo also hanging around down here, seeing if CLG has the manpower to take down this tier 1 in the bottom lane. Stixxay's Tristana very, very effective at doing just that. He'll throw the explosive charge on there, and these three should have no issue getting rid of this.
Yeah, this is 3 people on this tier 1 turret though, and now they just reached this top turret. It doesn't even look like it's too much of a stacked wave, but they may be able to get it here, but I feel like it'll take another wave crashing.
Yeah, and you can expect this type of swap to come through. That's why Darshan is already backed away. LirA wasn't even in position to do the same 3-man play, but you have to respect the play as if he was in position, because you would die if you end up staying under your turret. Omar makes the roam mid though.
Oh, Nisqy on Nisqy. Between 3 people, the beam comes out and he is out of there. Huhi grabbing the kill. That's now LirA trying to finish off the Rift Herald. You gotta touch it though.
Must protect the Rift Herald.
Now they're just gonna defend it, leaving it on the ground. Omar jumping in, Hakuho trying to stop him. Box is down, brutal to Omar, and he's spider food. Get that Herald. One of the ward now canceled. They want to get the Herald if they can, but CLG playing protection around it. If you can stop them from picking this up, you make the objective almost worthless. You get the 100 gold, and that's it.
You know what's worthwhile? The mid turret!
That's worth more than 100 gold! Yes!
Oh. That was really well played from a macro sense from CLG. They were able to get Nisqy with that gank, and that changed everything. They lose mid-priority from Envy's side, and then they push it in with the Tristana off of the swap because they had more tempo from the bottom lane.
And I have to credit Darshan for this as well. Instead of just waiting at his second-tier turret, he goes to make a play while Caitlyn's trying to finish his off. Very near to steal on the Rift Herald, and this is some over-exuberance by CLG. Omar gets flayed out. The burst damage from the Elise as well as the Caitlyn comes through. He does not have his passive up, but then when the teleport is canceled from the Shen, Envy kind of loses all pressure. They can no longer force to go back in to pick up the Rift Herald, but they also can't clear up the mid-wave with Nisqy dead.
Yeah.
Well, they will grab Mountain Drake #2 themselves, which means as we go later and later into this game, and as Baron becomes an objective on the map, and as turret pushing could become a huge issue in terms of racing down your opponents or getting something on a rotation, they are going to have that edge.
Yeah, and because they have those double Mountain Drakes, like the siege composition and what Envy really want to do with this Caitlyn is set up those traps. Apollo, level 9, 3 ranks in the traps right now, so he's definitely kind of pivoted towards that as opposed to maxing with both over Peacemaker. And the Mountain Drakes are going to help them when they get to these turrets and potentially help them push, but they have not been ahead at all so far this game in the turret shoving game. They are 3-2 currently. And they didn't get Rift Herald, so they aren't even going to be able to knock down that mid one. It's hard to get vel'koz's mid turret with the W just clearing everything out. Smacks first.
vel'koz will have great wave clear. I think the biggest use of the double Mountain Drake will work with essentially the synergy you'd have between Cassiopeia and Shen. You're able to always have Shen in a side lane, so if they ever have a fight where both Darshan and Seraph use teleport, they then just go force Shen down on the bottom side. Cassiopeia can apply so much Baron pressure as well. You can create a quick 5v4 and rush the Baron incredibly quickly, which will almost guarantee you a 5v4 fight if CLG try to go in. That being said, doing that against a Zac and a vel'koz, even in a 5v4, could be disastrous, so Envy has to proceed with caution.
Yeah, Envy have to get creative, though, because, like you said, the siege is something that's not going to work out for them because of the vel'koz in mid. They're going to have to find some type of pressure in a side lane, but the Gnar is beating the Shen right now, so now you have to kind of figure out where you're putting your resources, because the Baron's up in a minute, and that's really what you have to play for here with those Mountain Drakes, like you said. It's almost like Envy, you're going to have to gravitate towards that.
And honestly, this vel'koz pick has been doing so much for CLG so far. Huhi still unkilled on the pick. We mentioned that that was the state going into this game, but the range on this champion is so extreme that when you look at the lineup on the side of Envy, yeah, you've got Caitlyn as one of the longest range AD carries in the game, but Cassiopeia is a mid-range threat. Elise is trying to get on top of you from a mid-range area of effect.
Yes.
It's going to be difficult to actually get to this back line and take Huhi out of the picture.
Yeah, and this is just one of those things that Huhi does. Not only does he have the Aurelion Soul that you're not used to playing around, he's got the vel'koz that many teams are not used to playing around from a pro setting. So Cassiopeia feels like a very blind pickable champion into a lot of matchups once you've banned out a few things, and against CLG that could just not be the case sometimes.
And like you said yesterday, a lot of those high-presence mid laners got nerfed on 7-16. There are those untouched champions that are just kind of waiting under the surface for when everything else gets nerfed or banned out. And now you're looking at a best of 5 where this first game, if they aren't able to deal with this vel'koz with the amount of engagement they've drafted, you might be spending more than 4 bans on Huhi. It's crazy to think about.
Yeah, but Envy also still has a lead in this game. Not only do they have the gold, they have the double Mountain Drake, which is going to be so important to track as we go forward. Infernal Drake is the next one up. That's great to have double Mountain for as well, because you get to kill that in about 2 seconds if you're there for the spawn.
Now, the thing I want to mention, though, going back to what you talked about earlier, specifically, Jatt, is when we get into these late-game team fights, because Envy does have a lead, but granted, it's 500 gold of a lead.
Right.
The Zac is still going to be super effective in a 5 versus 5. LirA, although he is 1-1-2, although he has found some damage and found an opportunity to get onto the CLG lines, he hasn't run away with things like we were kind of expecting him to do with Hakuho. Now going to be jumped on. The damage from Stixxay comes through, the stun and the flash away with Stand United. Hakuho will live.
Yeah, a lot of critical summoner spells burned there, however. Seraph has to immediately go back to base, and that's a lot of map pressure in the favor of CLG. To get to that point, it is funny, the juxtaposition between the Zac and the Caitlyn nerfs and how they're more distinct in their power curves now.
Oh, that was close. Had to heal.
Anyway, Zac lost a lot of early pressure, which CLG had to do even more to get him through that early game now. You saw they could pretty much do no offensive plays with any of their lanes thanks to what Envy did. But then Apollo, while bullying that lane, is only 15 CS up on Stixxay now, and the game is still even in favor of CLG turrets. So that discrepancy is going against Envy, as is the Zac versus Elise power curve. So CLG does want this to go to late game, and they're okay with that.
Exactly, and I think looking at composition, I feel like CLG are in a much better spot than Envy right now. I feel like the gold being tied or even with Envy in lead is deceptive at the moment, because CLG's composition has a really long-range mage that'll put Cassiopeia at a disadvantage. You have Engage, you have the split push advantage, and then you also have more wave clear than the enemy team. So even if Envy wanted to shove up, you can stop that. They can't split push with the Shen and have that advantage on the global. You have to go for picks.
Aphromoo taken pretty low there. LirA repels up, lands on the other side of the wall 50, keeps himself safe. And it's so dangerous to chase after CLG as well because there's so many tools at their disposal to stop you and just burst you down.
And every time you're playing against a long-range mage, like the vel'koz, you have to think about how much engage you have. Like you said, it's hard to kind of get in on that CLG team. The Aphromoo will be able to hit you out. They have Buster Shot, ways to disengage, also ways to engage. But the vel'koz, you have to use like Shen, Taunt, Flash, and even then worry about the disengage. So getting on this vel'koz and staying on this vel'koz and the Tristana is going to prove to be a very difficult task for Envy.
The cocoon lands from LirA there onto Stixxay, but the follow-up isn't possible as they try to close the gap. They just have more and more spells from Huhi flying at them. They'll do it again to secure some vision around the Baron, as it is now live, 23 minutes into the game, so we'll have that one to worry about more and more as the clock ticks forward. Infernal Drake spawning in 15 seconds, though, likely going to be a fight over that.
Yeah, and I think the fight both teams are okay with having. Envy, it'll force CLG to kind of come to them, whereas CLG, they're all right with having a team fight with the way that the game has panned out so far with the 2 items. Look at that, there's the burn.
Baron rush, though.
It actually is a lot of damage. They can get it.
It doesn't matter.
Darshan's going to hit third. 2K.
Take him out if they can. Aphromoo.
Omar's
go
going
in.
to get in.
Oh my God! And OmarGod takes the Baron at CLG. Now mounts the counterattack. The life form disintegration rate finding its way onto Nisqy. LirA repels up and over, lands on the other side of the wall. Darshan chasing after, and the boomerang blade takes him down. CLG, what a steal. OmarGod, there's your moment.
The clutch moment that CLG fans have been waiting for from OmarGod right there. Held down in the early game. Baron steal into the Infernal Drake because they can potentially go straight for that. That gives CLG control of the game.
The flay and then the missed hook allowed OmarGod to get in. Hakuho was doing his damnedest, but it's still not enough to shut the rookie down.
Oh my goodness. And so much of these Baron things is on the team. LirA needs them to keep Omar away from the pit here. That's what Hakuho is trying to do. Gets him with the flay, doesn't lock in the hook, and it's just a flash smite for Omar. Envy was kind of pulling off the Baron for the impending fight, which is understandable, but they have to completely burst that Baron down until it's dead if they're going to make that call, not peel off half a second before it's done.
You can take his blue, you can take his Gromp, you can take his Wolves, but he will take your Baron. CLG now in the driver's seat. 2,000 gold up, they collected the Infernal Drake, they've got the Baron buff for greater than 2 minutes remaining. But now, what can they do with it? They need to get some turrets or something. As OmarGod starting up the fight yet again. Life from the same hook. Gonna be thrown away the bottom laners. Hakuho in some trouble. Nearly gonna be taken down, but Huhi dies first. Aphro second. Envy may have found their fight. It's 1 for 2 overall. They lose their AD carry, but take out the enemy mid laner. Getting Huhi out of there is very important. But now they're going even further. Hakuho too low to really participate too much in this fight. Seraph gonna be pulled to safety. Walking away with the explosive charge. Tier 2 likely going down here as it does only have a sliver of health remaining. Envy retreating back into their own base. They're in a 4 versus 3, but that 3 from CLG shows no fear.
Yeah, definitely a little bit of a messy fight there as Huhi did get hooked by Hakuho, so very nice catch there by Envy, kind of keeping them relevant in this game. Do want to go back to that Baron steal though, yet again. After this replay, we will talk about it.
Yeah, so OmarGod goes in, hits them both together, but this is big because Apollo on the left side is forced to flash out, and the hook clearly, like we said, it's hard to engage on this vel'koz. You really have to look for that pick. And then Seraph saves Hakuho there, but it ends up with Stixxay getting Apollo, and then the double rocket jump. But like you were saying, Jatt, with the Baron.
Yeah, so the smite from Ogmar was pretty much perfectly timed. What you can do with Elise oftentimes is you time your Q, execute with your smite. And since you're the one doing that, right, you get it at the same time. However, the problem with any of this is the Q has an animation. So even if you're going to time it exactly when your Q lands, with exactly when your smite lands, the enemy jungler can do that too. And Omar actually just smote more perfectly than LirA did. And he's gone.
Yeah, they jump on him bottom, and they pick him up. This frozen mallet is doing so much for Darshan.
Yeah, he's got an adaptive helm maybe for vel'koz, but that does not help you against Gnar Trist.
No.
So he gets bursted down real fast.
Not even a little, only a ninja tabby to protect himself against the combined damage of those two. I mean, Seraph is out of there for 25 seconds. Only 2 seconds remaining on the Baron buff. Pulled in, life form disintegration ray. Apollo, you better not walk back into that one. CLG looking to push onto the tier 3 now, break open the inhibitor line. Stixxay will not stop shooting as the death sentence comes down. Only finds its way to Aphro, who mounts the counter attack back into Hakuho, who's now going to be taken down. Stixxay will not let him escape this time. Nisqy, Apollo, and LirA trying to defend this one, but it's 5 men strong from CLG versus 3 from Envy.
And just this,
are about to fall.
This effective range of this vel'koz versus what the Cassiopeia has, I have to say, when you're talking about a coach like Zix and this team of CLG that has these champion pools that are so flexible, you can really craft some creative things that are frustrating to play against. So huge shout out to both the coach and the team for that.
Yeah, and being able to play around what matters right here. They want to be able to get a push down, and Seraph is overextended. So they set up a bit of a bait. Darshan's always had the lead, Stixxay then 2v1s. But at the turret itself, the fact that Huhi could zone Apollo off the turret, but then Aphromoo stands in front, tanks all the traps, and no one on Envy can zone Stixxay off the turret. So that's kind of what matters there, is whose DPS can actually do the damage. And in that fight, it was completely CLG's.
Now, Envy has to find some kind of a way to hold on, because there's an Infernal Drake spawning in 2 minutes. They're down 4,000 gold. They've lost the most important inhibitor on the map whenever Baron is potentially available, which will be for too much longer. A few more minutes on that one. 4,000 gold Baron power play for CLG off that steal from Omar.
And OmarGod, like we said, came in near the end of the split, and all eyes were on him, kind of under the microscope there, because CLG, well, they were still having mixed success. Last time they actually had a 2-0 week was back in week 5. So the last 3 weeks of the split, they were just splitting 1-1 back and forth, and a lot of people were pointing at OmarGod and his familiarity with the team. With the time, they've been able to get him a little more acclimated.
And what happened at the very start of this game is the nightmare you have.
Feels bad, man. As a Zac?
You're up against an Elise as a Zac. You have to recall because the bot lane and mid lane pushes you off your red. The jungler then steals your blue. Like, what do? And it's...
You scale.
You scale. And your team needs to be okay with that, which is, I think, one of the most beneficial things about being on CLG is their ability to commit to team play, because everyone on CLG then says, we are no longer allowed to be aggressive in lane for the next 10 minutes, and we need to make sure we don't lose this game then. And they did that. First blood didn't happen until 13 minutes or so into this game, and that's the big thing that allowed OmarGod to scale back up, was the team playing around.
And like you said, you have to scale, which involves OmarGod not dying, not going into dangerous parts of the jungle, and they all kind of control warded for him, and they were able to get some picks back to kind of equalize the game. Because OmarGod, I was watching his wolves, the one that LirA had just left one up for a long time, it actually went through a full cycle of the jungle respawning, and he didn't clear it because it was an unsafe side of his jungle.
Now, speaking of scaling, gentlemen, both AD carries have hit that big 3 crit item power spike. And going back to what you said earlier, Zirene, remember, the nerfs to the Caitlyn were more towards that late game. So things are starting to favor the Trist more and more now. CLG moving on to Infernal Drake #2 for themselves. Envy, nowhere close to the
Yeah, double Infernal is going to just be icing on the cake. Not to mention he has Last Whisper ahead of Apollo, so his champion has better attack speed scaling as well as just having more gold. And the Baron setup is going to be really critical right here. They do not have the Mountain Drakes that Envy has. Elise is a tremendous Baron stealer, so I think CLG, unless they get just paramount vision control, is going to be looking to find a fight. They got a Righteous Glory on an Alistar, and they still have the Zac initiation. So when Envy tries to stop this is when CLG is going to try and pounce.
Righteous Glory is one of my favorite items in this entire game because of what it gives you in terms of a trigger pull for starting a fight. This can make a play out of something that otherwise would not be one. Darshan stealing the blue buff away from Envy. Even if LirA would have been able to get that, it would have guaranteed that it was kept out of the clutches of Nisqy, shutting down some of that Twin Tank spam a little bit, which is always what you want to do as we get into these later game fights. 31 minutes into the game, people are starting to hit. It's not just the AD carries, it's everybody. It's starting to hit those big multi-item power spikes. The tanks are becoming those brick walls that are nigh impossible to get through without proper focus fire, but the carries are the wrecking balls that can knock them down.
Yeah, and like you said, the items coming through, Huhi Banshee's Veil for him, even harder to get on this vel'koz, have your CC land, so you can't hit him with just a long-range hook for the pick now. Got to get him with something else first, and then have the CC come through. It's actually so frustrating to play against this, and this is something that you look at and you're halfway through the game and you go, man, the draft is something that is not allowing us to actually get to this guy, and that feels bad.
Yeah, and thinking about League of Legends in this way as they start Baron could be very interesting. Aphromoo playing like he's clearing wards while the rest of the team is on Baron, and Envy's just not in a position to stop this.
Apollo's all the way back in the base. I don't see how Envy does anything against this unless they go for a miracle steal. No. Envy not getting anywhere. Finding some stuns, some damage out onto Aphromoo. Repel up from LirA, but he's not going to be able to land really anywhere. Has to flash back over the wall. The life form disintegration raid chasing him down. Stixxay comes over. He's going to take him. A killing spree for that Tristana. CLG now marching down the mid lane. They've got 5 versus 4 for 40 seconds. They've got Baron up. It's time to push mid.
Yeah, Seraph not ulting in on LirA. Left him dead to rights right there. Probably wouldn't have been able to save him since Stixxay could have still followed a flash. We'll have it if CLG try and dive, but as you mentioned, 5v4.
Push comes out, not finding its way onto anyone. The Tristana just does so much damage to these objectives at this point in time. Seraph now has to be pulled to safety. Dark Passage down means Envy cannot step up. Inhibitor number 2 under fire and under the ground. That thing's out of here for now as Darshan takes it out and CLG rotates over back to the bottom lane inhibitor they took down before, now going after that for the second time.
And even though there's a CS advantage for Apollo, there's a level advantage for Stixxay. They've been giving him those solo lanes. They got him.
He hit him with 2 Qs and then pressed the ult.
And now they're destroying the rest of Envy. Both of the damage dealers are gone, and CLG will likely make their victory push here. Huhi, in the blink of an eye, just deletes the remainder of Apollo's health bar and likely seals this game. Stixxay now caught out. There's no way to follow it up. CLG jumps in. Omar grabbing the kill onto LirA as Seraph tries to get himself out. Hakuho's not going to be doing the same. Stixxay's on a rampage, and CLG, 34 minutes into the game, take game number 1.
Just like that, you land enough skill shots on that vel'koz. He killed Apollo from 1,500 units away, off screen basically. But the clutch smite from OmarGod, withstanding the early game power of LirA's Elise as well as Apollo and Hakuho's bottom lane, bought them enough time to scale and get to the team play aspects, and that's what they did.
And so many times as a jungler, when you get put behind like that, you feel, I don't want to be a liability to my team. I don't want to have them have to play around me. And then you go too aggressive, you try too many things, but everybody on CLG, it looked like they were okay with giving that away, saying we scale, back up, it's okay, don't take risks, and then they were able to find the picks later on. So OmarGod did not get ahead of himself, did not get flustered at the fact he got put behind, and didn't go for very risky plays, which is something that I have to say is something you, in a rookie, you want to prove yourself. This is how you prove yourself, not by making those aggressive plays, but by being able to be standard in your play and to play from behind.
That level of patience truly is impressive, especially considering he's a rookie, like you said, and I wanted to keep eyes, I said it at the beginning of the game, on how Envy was going to address the fact that CLG beat them last time by containing LirA. This time, they didn't contain LirA. LirA was off to a really good start, but he wasn't able to do anything with it. Envy's early game power machine was shut down. It hit the mid game, and CLG, with that patience, scaled him to the victory.
Absolutely, and LirA, while he did get very ahead of OmarGod, and you need to credit that for him, has to be able to get his lanes ahead, right? Because the carry performances is what's going to be mattering at the end of the day. Nice draft, nice play by CLG. Game 1.
Well, for more on the CLG win in game number 1, we're going to send things over to the analyst desk.
Thank you very much, Captain Flowers. CLG coming away with game 1 here in our best of 5 series against Envy, but I want to key off of exactly what they're talking about, the jungle matchup. First, let's put it into context of the team compositions as we pull this up. We've got the first pick, Zach from CLG, up against the aggressive early jungler in Elise for LirA.
It's a little scary just because with Zach getting nerfed a lot recently, he doesn't feel like he's quite that first pick priority. We didn't see it at all really yesterday, and it feels like something that is more of a pocket pick. Or not pocket pick, but just like you can pick it if you're good at it. And OmarGod, it's nice to see him on a tank. That seems to be more his play style, and he was able to perform on it, but it was rough, especially when you're playing into Elise.
Yeah, I mean, like you're talking about, especially the current state of Zach, I was like, oh, well, you probably don't have to first pick it. I'm totally fine with them, building around that and actually incorporating it into their composition, but maybe a little bit different draft priority, but didn't end up being an issue later in the game. Early, though, Envy very clearly came into this game thinking exactly what we thought after the last matchup with CLG, where they're like, we are not letting the jungle takeover happen, team-wide invade, and I think that Apollo and Hakuho are the ones that deserve so much credit for this.
Very much so. A very clear level 1 strategy from Envy, identifying that the jungle matchup is what was going to swing this series as a whole, or at least that's what they believe. And so, denying OmarGod his first first buff. Any camps here in the early levels, while LirA is just free farming on the flip side of the map.
Yeah, and Apollo in particular being pretty fearless here. He knows that they're in this brush, continues to walk up, just pelt people over and over.
Exactly. He'll step back into the brush whenever he has a chance, if it's in range, to charge up his headshots faster. He sticks around, never lets OmarGod get back in before the patience runs out on the Brambleback, because he could see, he was like, okay, it's only a half bar here.
Right.
Omar's going to come back and try and finish it. Couple more headshots there. It takes him down to half, and so much credit to the bottom lane, because even after sticking around for a super long delay on the pull, they then crush the bottom lane as well and get a bunch of pressure.
That's the thing, though, for me that's like a little concerning if you're an EnVy fan, is this was like a pretty ideal start where LirA gets a massive lead. He goes down to the bot side to try and catch out Omar a little bit later. He finishes Krugs right before he gets there. Then the bot lane can't get a dive off, and even though bot continues to force around there and they're able to snowball through that, they get turret and dragon and things like that, they're not actually able to convert that into anything tangible. And as we get into the mid game, CLG is pretty much even, just down a little bit in dragons.
All right, without a doubt, that start is going to cause some worry for EnVy, the team itself, and the fans at home in the fact that they didn't extend a larger lead. Of course, let's acknowledge the tools that they did pick up as a result of this, right? They did gain that pressure in the bottom lane to win the 2v2, as well as from that roam down to the bot lane from the Elise, get the first of the Mountain Dragons, and then subsequently a second. And that did kind of give them a few things to work with in the mid game if played properly.
Yeah, the Mountain Dragons they were stacking up were actually very, very beneficial, allowing them to get that pressure on Baron that we saw to transition through to the mid game, plus that first turret gold. So there was kind of the snowball set in motion for Team EnVy, and it kind of culminated in this, though, where, oh my God, this is going to do wondrous things for the confidence of a rookie in playoffs.
Yeah, just gets complete revenge on LirA here. You may have destroyed my early jungle clear, but I'm going to do the more important play this game. I'm going to steal the Baron. It was a great call by EnVy still, all things considered. Just double Mountain Dragon with the Elise and Cassiopeia is insane Baron damage. They almost got it down in time. Just, you know, LirA, a little bit misexecution. Didn't seem like he comboed his smite with his Elise execute, and as a result, Zach picks that one up. And after that, it was kind of off to the races. You see the gold graph there, just jettison up for CLG.
We don't even have a tooltip for vel'koz. That's how rare that pick is. I love it.
No, here's who is he?
Yeah.
Who is that mid-champion?
Oh, yeah. Who knows? Who knows? But
Favoritism by the Riot broadcast.
I do think that the confidence piece is a huge thing, right? When it comes to a rookie in your first LCS playoff, game number 1, you get focused and then you make the big play for the team to dive back into it. Again, when we talk about was already a lopsided matchup in terms of expectation, feels like it just became even more so.
And I think the thing is which of these two trends is going to keep up? Like, can EnVy keep getting early game leads and then just execute a little bit better around Baron? Or is CLG going to bounce back, not give up this huge deficit in the early game for their jungler, and then actually make plays to get their own leads in the mid game?
Yeah, EnVy has been a very good early game team at multiple points in their history, and that is not an area that people even question anymore, right? So that is still going to be something that CLG have to worry about. Another thing they have to worry about is there were some kind of questionable engages from them where it didn't seem like the entire team was really on the same page. A couple of missed seconds, basically, for spread out.
And those second-long gaps leave a lot open in terms of the way that things can go in the other direction. I do want to push us ahead towards game 2, just because, interestingly enough, EnVy has selected to remain on red side, and we heard Zirene talking about their win percentages throughout the season, blue versus red being quite disparate, but I think it points to a lot of what we're seeing here on patch 7.16 so far in the playoffs, is that the majority of teams do value being that counter pick, getting the 2-pick first rotation as opposed to the 1-pick first rotation.
I mean, if you're EnVy and you're looking at your draft, you're pretty happy. You have a really strong winning bot lane. Your jungler is very aggressive. You make some plays. You have a great scaling champion for Nisqy, who is great on Cassiopeia. So this feels like a great game. Shen just has to hold on topside versus Gnar. And then, I mean, if you want to run this strategy back, great. But you're kind of assuming here that CLG is not going to adapt and change up their game plan.
Yeah, one of the biggest, strengths there that we saw, the resiliency of this team in Champ Select. Huhi is fine going, okay, you can first pick your mid laner, you can throw more bans at me. He has this stable of mid lane champions that is so different from the rest of the league, and he can still play the meta champions as well. So that was definitely a big asset for us.
Do you have any concerns around the top lane matchup? I know it didn't play a major part necessarily in this game, but we did see a massive CS lead extended by Darshan, as well as a crazy amount of split push pressure, and I could see that becoming more and more a key matchup in this series if EnVy's going to even have a chance at coming away with it.
I actually think it's more important than we've really talked about this game, just because if that matchup's going more even, CLG does not have a mirror play to go for while their bot side is getting kind of smashed and pushed in. So this was something that it's under noted with how much attention was down on the bot side. But with that 20 CS lead, the pressure, Zach went top and almost got first hurt at the same time. So they actually didn't end up down tempo at all making that play. And that's something that if Darshan is not continuing to do, like that is a problem for EnVy.
Yeah, with the way that those two players have been playing this season, I expect Darshan to have the advantage in top lane every game this series.
All right, well, a good little comeback from the rocky start here from CLG in Game 1, but we're going to head to a break. When we come back, we'll see if Team EnVy can pick up their own win versus CLG in Game 2. Don't go anywhere.